and I'm back with another tutorial for Neat and Tangled. This month I'm using this super cute stamp set called Alligator, and I'm going to be showing you some no line coloring, and we're also going to be creating a really soft, almost like a watercolor look to this cute little image. So let's get started. Okay, so we are going to be using YG67, YG63, YG17, YG13, and G20. And we're also going to be using some browns to create a little bit of a ground here. So you're gonna need E42, E41, or E40. And if you have other light brown coordinating colors, those will work as well. So we're going to start by adding color to the shadowed areas. Now, a lot of people, when they color no line images, they have a tendency just to outline the entire image with a darker color. And that's not really the look you want to do, because you still want to be able to have those light and dark shadows, but you still want to be able to color the image fully without having that whole outline look. So I've stamped my image onto my Copic Express It blending card using the Desert Sand Memento ink, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's get out the YG13, the lightest color, just because sometimes when you add the darker color first, you kind of have a tendency to overdo it, and since we are doing that no line technique, we want to keep the color as light as we can. Not only that, but we do want to, I'm trying to create the whole watercolor look, so that way you can still achieve that really light color combination using the Copic markers. So with your YG13, we're gonna just outline the image just in the shadowed areas. So right underneath the mouth here, I'm just gonna outline the outline of the image, so there's just the stamped part. And then back here behind this nostril, well, since the nostril is standing above the alligator's nose, you want it to have a little bit of a shadow back behind there. And right back here behind the eye, we want to give this a little bit of a shadow, so it looks like that back here is wrapping around, so that way it has that roundness appearance. And then right underneath the arm here, and all underneath the arm. And then right underneath the belly, and underneath the feet, or underneath the belly onto the legs. The whole inner part of the leg is going to be darker. That's where the shadowed area will be, to create that roundness for his leg and the foot. And then back here, so everything closest to the alligator's body. So anything that's kind of out, we don't really want, there shouldn't be a shadow there. So we want to make this part of the tail look like it's coming out in front of the alligator. So we want to darken the whole outline and then all along the bottom. And you want it to be a little thick. And you see that I'm making those lines. And when I'm coloring, by adding those little lines in between here with this color, now when I go back to with my lighter color, it's gonna fall in between those little lines, and it's gonna start blending it out for us. So now we're gonna take our G20, and I'm just gonna come out just a little bit more. This is really gonna start to come together now, and that way when we add the little bit of the darker colors, we know where we're laying them without over putting the color down. So I am still leaving a little bit of white, and I will eventually color it in with this G20, but I don't want to color it fully in just yet because you want that to be the lightest. So I'm gonna get a nice blend on the YG13 with the G20 by just coming in just a little bit more. All right, so now we're gonna kind of repeat. So I'm gonna take my YG17, and we're gonna go back and add a little bit of dark in the same areas where we first added the YG13. We're just building upon those layers. in between the eyes and the back part. Okay, so now we're gonna go again with our YG13 just to blend this out. I'm gonna come underneath this whole part of the mouth. I'm gonna start to come up the point of the tail. And again, we're gonna go with our G20. And this time I'm filling in the rest of the alligator. So after you get that blend, go back with our YG13. And I'm just doing a little bit of a heavy flick so I really continue that line, and then wherever it stops, it stops. Just so it softens up that harsh line. And on the bottom of the feet, we'll add a little bit more color there. And now I'm going to go back with my G20 to blend this out. Now we're going to go ahead and add some textures. So we're going to take the YG17 and we're going to start in those shadowed areas again. And I'm just going to add a little bit of dots to kind of give it that scaly appearance. And as I get into the lighter area, I'm going to spread the dots out a little bit more, so there's not as many. And you want to make sure you add some little dots on the actual outline of the image. That way it really has that scaly appearance. So this is the lighter area, so I don't want to go as heavy. So just here and there. All right, now we're going to do the same thing with the YG13. And then the same thing with the G20, but this time we don't really have to be too precise on where we're putting it, since by adding the G20 all over, still doing the dotting, it's gonna add some texture and kind of pull apart and soften up all those harsher lines or the little dots that we added. So this is gonna kind of blur them out. And then to make it stand out just a little bit more, I'm going to take my YG67, and just in a few areas here and there, I'm going to make a little line, so on the outline of the image. So here, I want this shadow to stand out a little bit more, so you could tell the difference between his arm and his body, and a little bit up here, and where his mouth is. And the difference between this nostril and the back part of his nose. And then right in here, we want to be able to tell that this is his body and that's his tail. So I'm just going to outline. And then I'm going to come along the bottom. And then the same thing on this side. I'm going to continue that line all the way across. And then on the inner part and the back part of his leg. I'm going to go back with my YG13 and add a couple more dots just in that area where we added that YG67, just to kind of soften it. I'm going to make this a little bit more shadowed right underneath here. Let's blend that out with the G20. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and do his belly and the little scales on the little pokey parts. I don't know what they're called. We're going to take the YG67, and again, all along the bottom part, we're just tracing, because this is going to be the bottom part of those scales. So then on the bottom, coming up to that little point, we're just going to add a little flick, not all the way up, just a little. So we're going to do the same thing over here. So trace that back, and then coming up on the sides. And then we'll take the YG67, and all I'm going to do is trace along the bottom part, making it a little bit thicker. And the same thing up here. And then we'll take that YG13 and finish filling it in. And then to make it stand out just a little bit more, I'm going to take my W7 and again trace very thin all along the bottom of those scales. And the same thing up here. And I'm going to actually shadow these a little bit more. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of color onto the outline of the image. Really making it stand out and pop on the back of the legs. And then let's just dot his little eyes. And now let's take the YG67 again, and we're gonna do his little tummy. So I'm going to go on these lines on both sides, but I'm not coming in fully across the lines. So you're just gonna kind of come around the side of them and then just slightly coming in. And then we're going to take the YG17 this time. And I'm just going to start coming in just a little bit more. And then the YG13. So this time I'm going to do a heavy flick, starting from the darker area, so that way I pull some of that color out and making it blend across, but still leaving that white part in the very center. And now I'm going to take my G20 and fill it all in. I go back with my YG13 just a little bit, and on the areas where I could see the outline that it's still brown, I'm just going to give it a little bit more color. Since I'm doing this with the lighter one, and we already have our shadows, it won't really feel like we're just coloring in or just outlining the whole image. I'm going to add a little bit more of a shadow around the back part of his eye. And then we'll blend it out with the G20. Make sure you're really careful that you don't pull in any of that W7 from the little dot we made it for his eye. Give it a little more texture. All right. So we want to give a little bit of a shadow to his teeth. So you're going to need W1 and W00 or any other of the lighter 2 gray colors. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a line using my W1 right at the mouth, at the top part of his teeth. And then I'm going to take my W00 and I'm just going to trace along the bottom just to make him stand out a little bit. Actually, let's take the YG67 and just make a really thin outline along the bottom just to make his teeth stand out a little bit. There we go. So let's go ahead and ground him. So let's get out the E42. And I'm just going to add a couple little flicks coming out. Give a little bit of a shadow, come out in this direction. And then I'm going to take my E41. and then my E40. I'm gonna go all the way down. And go back with my E42 just to give it a little bit more depth. And again with my E41. And again with my E40. Now let's add a little bit of grass here and there. So let's take the YG67. And then the YG63. So there we go. We have our little alligator, and we've grounded him and made a couple little bit of grass there. I hope you enjoyed this month's tutorial, and I will see you next month.